Cool. Hello, everybody. Welcome
Hello,
to
hello.
our session, Blame the End User, where we're going to give you some top tips to unscrew up the user adoption in Office 365. You can see me. I'm Marijn Somers. You can't see my buddy over in Helsinki,
Hello,
Jussi.
hello. Hi.
Awesome. You can still hear him. That's the most important part. You can't see him. Well, we have this limitation here, so that's okay. You see, just said that I'm looking fabulous, so
Yeah,
awesome.
we
It's
we, we
just
we chose to
going.
have your video stream, Marijn, so I'm fine with this.
Nice. All right, cool. So this is probably not your first session today, so you'll probably seen this already, that the SharePoint conference in Las Vegas is now called the Microsoft 365 Collaboration Conference. So that looks pretty cool. I think the name suits much better. We've got our sponsors, so most of them you'll probably know already. So I've been working with a number of these. So really cool that they're also sponsoring even these virtual events like this, where we still need these sponsors. Do you want to get one of these Oculus Quest things? I've got one. These are awesome to play with. My daughter loves to play with it. I love to play with it. Friend me on the Oculus app at Marijn Somers to try to beat me at Beat Saber if you win one. Also, consider donating to this charity relief. This is also super important, definitely in these times where we have healthcare running. It's difficult. Everything is so difficult. So yeah, please try to sponsor them as well. Jussi, over to you.
Yeah, so Marijn and I, we don't have only these sessions here in the virtual summits all over the world, but we also have a YouTube channel called Blame the End User, and this is really a user adoption focused YouTube channel. And there we discuss different topics around user adoption mostly in Office 365 related topics. So there we have a lot of guests, also famous guests like John Olson himself, John Levesque, Carolina, and Thomas. Mostly like people from the community where we are having discussions around user adoption.
Yeah. And it's always fun. It's a little bit R-rated, so if you're not a fan of foul language, maybe this is not for you, but we will always have lots of fun. Yeah, true. So Jussi, who are you, man?
So quickly about myself, my name is Jussi. In English, the name would be John. I'm based in Helsinki, Finland. MVP since 2013. Mostly always active in the community around user adoption and change management. That in that sense, also I work for a software startup called Habit.com, which is a contextual-based learning framework. So where you can overlay a learning framework over a web application to teach the end users to learn stuff. And in my private life, I'm a geek by nature. I like cars, Star Wars, and Lord of the Rings, and I'm also sailor without a boat and a foodie in the hoodie.
Nice. Cool. So yeah, my name is Marijn Somers. You can follow me on Twitter at Marijn Somers. I do work at Balestra, so I've got my own company called My 365 Coach, where I try to do some productivity coaching for organizations. Here's my LinkedIn link as well. Feel free to send me an invite. I've been an MVP for 1 year now. I've been working with SharePoint, doing projects like this for over 14 years now. So I think we're kind of in a good position to be talking about this after all the experience we have implementing these things. So I think we really have a good story to tell for you today. So our agenda for today is user adoption is hard, and we're gonna try to unscrew your user adoption story. So when we're doing projects, we are met with 5 problems, 5 difficulties, 5 things that we really need to focus on when we want to try to implement specific software or platform. So the first one is the digital literacy of our people. We need to find the right sponsor. We need to convey or communicate the importance. We need to have some goals and measurements in place as well. And then we also need to look at the complexity. We'll do a wrap up, have a few do's and don'ts. We'll have some discussions along the way. So this is kind of a free form format here. So that's what we do. All right.
Yeah, let's get going.
So what is user adoption? So to me, user adoption is the art of having users to actually use the things that you want to provide. So if you're from IT, you actually have specific tools because the business requires those tools. You think these are the tools that they need, and then you want to give them to the business, and then it is the art of having the business to actually start using these tools in the correct way. Why is this important? Well, you just spend all that money buying or developing a new tool, a new platform that now needs to be used by the business. So it is very important for your costs to be that they're actually being used. So your ROI is very important, but also for compliance, for security, for searchability. If everyone's using a different application, you don't have any compliance. Security is super hard. You can't find anything because everyone is working in a separate thing. So it is super important if everyone is using the same applications there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I always compare it like with the Formula One car. So you would have this really expensive, high-tech Formula One car, what would want to use to win your race in a Formula One race. So you wouldn't just let anyone out of the street drive that car in the race, right? So you would actually train that person over years and years and years. Of course, this comparison is a bit extreme, but it goes a bit into that direction. And I like to use this like this because it's very clear for people to understand that actually all the technology is the Formula One car and the end user is the driver. So you need to take care of the driver in that sense. And that means that user adoption takes care of the driver to actually be able to operate the car in an optimal way, and actually over time then will be able to even win a race. So it doesn't mean that you can drive the car, you can win the race, but over time you get better and you will have different training techniques and so on. So exactly the same applies also to user adoption in Microsoft 365 technologies.
All right, cool. So our first challenge would be digital literacy.
Yeah.
So what happens if my users can't even work with their computers? So I've got a few customers where people really don't like technology. So they just come in the morning, they try to turn on their computers, and what if it doesn't want to turn on? And they call the help desk instead of maybe looking if a wire is not in there, if the printer is not working. Okay, just see if does it have electricity, is the cable still plugged in, stuff like that. So if anything goes wrong, they just have no idea where to look for. They probably also do a lot of things still on paper. So what happens with those people if they can't even work with a computer? How can we bring in a sophisticated platform like, for example, Office 365 in there? So that's gonna be hard.
Yeah. So here, this slide is from Tracy van der Schijf, one of the heroes when it comes to user adoption, and she always preaches around digital literacy. So I really like this slide because it basically showcases what are the different digital literacy, let's say, categories or skills, and which service or which application is actually linked to them. So when we look at the top, critical thinking and evaluation, a very, of course, important skill nowadays with all this kind of information overflow what we have going on in our world. So users need to be much more able to critical think and to and to evaluate information they are receiving, and also, you know, to be able to make decisions faster. And it's harder nowadays because you have so much more information coming to your desk every day. So how can you separate the noise from the one information channels or information you actually would need in order to make decisions for your work? So very important skill to be honing now during this time. Then of course e-safety, a big one. So you can always say that a system is as secure as good as the end users are trained. So you can have the best things in place, but if a user sends out the wrong email to the wrong recipients, then you have a problem, right? So, and also it's a bit, you know, the balance between convenience and security. So convenience always wins. So that in a way, even though something seems inconvenient, maybe you need to find a way to show how it's done in a proper way, to kind of make sure that security is important, but also the user experience. So there's always this kind of balance between those topics. But mostly what I have known is that people just don't know how to use those tools or those security tools properly, and they just find it as a very, very big inconvenience, and then try to overcome that. What else? Cultural and social understanding and collaboration, they are very well connected. I think also here in this graphic in here, so many different cultures and social, let's say, castes or statuses and levels, they have of course a very big impact on collaboration. And nowadays we work in global organizations, in global teams. Most of the collaborators haven't even met themselves face to face. So how do we get literate in collaborate better together? And of course, with tools like Teams, stuff like this gets much more easier. And we can already see it in the popularity and in the performance of Teams, and now especially with the current COVID crisis, it became a must to actually be able to work online and to be able to work and communicate with your peers as they would be sitting next to you in a meeting room. So I think this skill is more important than ever. And the funny thing is that I've been working in the Central European area for a while. And there was always the kind of the culture that, okay, people need to come to work, and then you would be stuck 2-3 hours per day in a traffic jam to commute to the office, because they just said, well, you know, the business will not work if people are not in the office working. And I think the whole COVID crisis just proved otherwise. In many places where of course not human interaction was needed, the business was still going on, and sometimes even soared. So that just proves that when you are an information worker, working from home or being able and working in digital tools is something very, very important nowadays.
Yeah.
Yeah, Marijn, you just jump in if you have some comments. Or
yeah, absolutely. But I mean, I don't have any. You're just
okay.
doing
All right.
perfectly. Yeah.
Curate content, just to understand what it means, it's about finding information around a certain context or a certain topic, finding and gathering them together, maybe categorize them, and then let's say process them in a way that they are useful for your organization or for your project or for your team or so on. So that's kind of the content curation. A lot of MVPs do that, of course. There's always the same information flying around, but then you try to put in your own twist or enhance it with other similar type of information and so forth. So that's kind of what the curation of information is important, and especially you know, in this sense of the information overflow. This is very important skill nowadays.
Yeah.
Then, of course, a proficient communicator, especially when you don't sit in opposite of a person. Nowadays, when you are just staring at your laptop, you need to be very clear with communication, because it's harder to read body language, or it's harder to understand gestures of your body or of your face. I mean, 90 or 80% of the communication happens from the body language. And when you are in virtual spaces, this is much harder to convey. And therefore, you need to be much clearer with your messages and with your stories, or with your with the things that you want to bring across.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, creativity, very big part. It's hard to learn creativity in a way, but it's about being able to express yourself in a environment where you can do mistakes. Creativity has a lot to do with being able to do mistakes and not being afraid of them, thinking out of the box, connecting concepts and so on. Very important skill in the future, especially because the machine is taking over the routine jobs. So we need to focus on the place where the machine isn't good at, and that's in creativity, at least at the moment still. As soon as the machine starts to create paintings, then it's going to be a different story. But yeah, very important thing. And then, of course, practical and functional skills. This is kind of this classical onboarding of how can I use a tool, how can I search properly. I mean, having the search available doesn't make search good yet, but if you really know how to search well, or ask the right questions, you will have much better results. It's much easier to just blame the search engine. Hey, we should have a session called Blame the Search Engine.
Actually, we do, yeah. Nice.
Yeah. So it's easier to blame the technology when something isn't working, but in most of the cases, it's actually the end user who doesn't know how to handle it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and all these skills are super important. And if you have users that don't really like to work with computers, these are definitely areas where you need to support them. And here are some ways how you could do that. So the first is, of course, you need to identify what the issue is. So what are people not using? What are they not comfortable using? Find the gaps. Find the gaps where people say, okay, I don't like to work with, I don't know, Acrobat. I don't like to work with Yammer. I don't like to work with Teams. I don't like to print stuff. Find the gaps where they need more information, where they need more knowledge, more training. What you could do is you could share like daily productivity tips or weekly productivity tips. Could just be in an email to everyone, or maybe to specific people, specific target groups. If a number of people said that they don't like to work with Teams, maybe just target them very specifically to give them more information around that. Two screenshots that you can see here. They're both in Dutch. I'm sorry for that. The things that I did for companies or for customers of mine. The one was actually a tech bar. So every week on Wednesday morning, we would have a specific room where people could just walk in and they could just ask any question, any technical question to the people that were sitting there. So they could come in, they could ask how they could create a metadata field in SharePoint. They could ask how to do better meetings in Teams. It doesn't matter, whatever technical question they had, they could just walk in. The right-hand side, you see a thing called cookies and kennis in Dutch. So that means cookies and knowledge. So it translates very well into English as well. Where it's a smaller company, 60 people, and what happens is that every day at 10:30, every one of those people are just gathering together in the coffee area, and they're just gonna sit and talk and just drink coffee. So what we did was that we said, okay, just instead of sitting there at the coffee area, go to one of our large meeting rooms will provide you with cookies. You just bring your coffee or your tea with you. And then for 10 or 15 minutes, we are just gonna explain a short technical thing. So it's not gonna take you very long. It's just gonna be a small bite-sized thing. It's not mandatory, so if you don't want to, you don't have to go. You'll get a cookie or 2 cookies, just bring your own coffee. You'll have plenty of time to chat afterwards, but this way we can just give you like this little bite-sized piece of information and give you a cookie. And so it's a win-win situation. So,
yeah, now let's talk about another important topic, the company sponsor.
Let's talk about money.
Yeah, so is your management behind it? Of course, a very, very important aspect of user adoption, and also why user adoption often fails, is that the management is not very, let's say, keen on the topic itself, or it's not just very understandable for them how important it is in terms of a monetary impact. So there is always this question. So what would it cost to kind of train all your employees versus what does it cost if you don't train them at all? Okay, what is more expensive for the company? I would say, you know, the second. So if you have people, or if you give people this Formula 1 car and they cannot really pilot it, it will cost you a lot because they will crash it everywhere. Yeah. I mean, of course, it's a bit extremely sad, but it's just to underline the importance of this topic, that in order to make a user adoption project work, you need to have the management on board, and they need to be committed to that, also with cash, because the cash they are spending for the project, there is a certain value behind it or a certain reason. They just they don't just take Office 365 because it's fun and everyone else is doing it, right? So there's a reason behind it. There's a value behind it why they are doing it. Is it you know, because old technologies are getting ramped down, or is it because the new platforms give you much more opportunities and so on? There's always a reason behind it. So therefore, there also needs to be the reason clear for the management to understand, okay, we need to have proper user adoption in place, or otherwise the project will just fail, or then it will take much longer for the projects to get into the return on investment. And this is something we will look at in a slide a bit later.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Good point. So, importance. So you've probably seen this already, just a little in some kind of way, where a CEO or the management says like, yeah, digital transformation, it's years away. I don't see it happening. I have the same thing with a number of customers where they all say like, okay, going to Teams is not important for us. We've got SharePoint. We can go to our documents. We don't need to work from home. We don't want to invest in that. There's no importance there. But then suddenly this big sledgehammer of COVID-19 comes along, and suddenly it is becoming super important. I also saw this questionnaire popping by of who is responsible for your digital transformation in your organization. Is that the CEO, the CIO, the CTO, or is that COVID-19? And in much cases, this is actually what is happening.
Don't you have, Marijn, some customer who really was kind of like that they first didn't want to adopt to Teams, and now yes. I think.
Yeah, exactly. So they were actually saying, look, Teams is just out of the question. We don't need that. We got COVID-19 hitting the walls, and then suddenly I get calls saying, look, we have a board meeting in 2 weeks' time. We need to set it up pronto. This needs to happen right now. And what you see is that if you need to rush these things, you will forgo of training. User adoption will be completely different. You will not have the time to think about and implement proper governance. So be take a look at those risks, take a look at the things that might be important along the way.
Yeah, so here we go to the importance of driving user adoption. Before about the management, I was talking about return on investment. Adoption is all about closing the time gap between then when you do the investment for a new project or platform or process or whatever, until it really reaps its benefits. So you want to have that time as short as possible. And this is exactly what user adoption is doing. So it's shortening that time, so that you receive the return on investment as soon as possible. And this is always what I use in order to try to sell user adoption projects, or the importance of that. Nowadays, I'm more active in the Nordics of Europe, and there this is much more, let's say, clearer for the platform owners that this is important, and they're looking for other ways how to do that than classical classroom or creating manuals and things like that. Especially in a kind of fast changing way or world where we live in, it needs to be something else. But having said that, if you have this in mind, why it is important is that if you don't do that properly, you will lose a lot of money and a lot of time, and especially in business, it can even be, make it or break it decision, especially now when we look into the Corona times. Speed is everything, as Marijn just said before. They needed to have this board meeting done within 2 weeks, so you need to find times. How can I make this onboarding now happen within 2 weeks? Whereas before, I can do it later, or it's not so important, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
It could be life and death situation for some families, right? So it is super important. Yeah,
sure.
And this is something what we, at least Marijn and I and others from the community, try to bring across and to educate everyone around this.
Cool. So our next challenge, number 4, the return on investment. Jussi.
Yeah. So of course, when you roll out a new platform or a new process or project, there is costs involved, costs of resources, costs of human labor, licenses, and so on. And of course, as I said before, when you are rolling that new process or application out, you do it for some reason, and usually it is reaping the benefits of that new technology. And of course, that's the return on investment. And as showed before in the slide, with the user adoption, you want to get there as soon as possible. And in business, it is of course always like that, especially when talking to management or to a higher level, is that they are always after the money. So I hear a lot that, yeah, okay, we need to do user adoption. That costs so much, and then I say, well, yeah, again, if you don't train your users, not reaping the benefits over months of time will be much more expensive for you. And then usually they understand. So yeah. just to say that the main challenge of that is that for most is the ROI of user adoption not really like present. They just think, it's something what we need to do, because we need to somehow train our users. But it's as important, as even not more important than the whole technology project behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. No. So it is, as you said before, like what is more expensive? If you train your users, that's going to be super expensive, but if you don't train your users, that might be even more expensive, because then they don't know how to use your platform. They might use it in a different way, a way that is not aligned to your strategic goals, a way that is not compliant, a way that is not cost benefits. So that's the big question. So yeah, as you said before, yeah.
I mean, when you talk to customers, Marijn, do you have this type of discussion every now and then?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
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 So
the idea.
They say,
yeah. Go ahead.
So they rather say that okay, it's not really necessary to do it, and then okay, yeah. So and then of course, how do you prepare yourself to those conversations? And I think for us who are in this field, it's very important to have the right answers to questions like that, or to statements like that from management.
Yeah, they don't need to train people to use Google search. They don't need to train people to use Facebook. So why would you have to train people to do SharePoint, for example?
Yeah. Well, Google search versus SharePoint is a bit of a stretch.
Yeah,
but
still.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because to use that SharePoint example, you can do everything in SharePoint in 5 different ways, but only one way would be, in that case, the most cost effective. Yeah, and you need to know that. So in order to actually get that ROI as quick as possible.
Yeah, and of course, this fact is also driving the users mad that you can do like the same thing in 5, 6 different ways.
Also true.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Did you want to say anything else around
No,
ROI?
Yeah.
Okay. Complexity. So we've got the 5 stages of grief. Where we like, denial, we don't need to change. Oh, why is everything changing? You get angry. At some point, like, do we really need to change, and how much do we need to change? So if I just change this little bit, will you then so you kind of get into a bargaining phase around the whole change. You might get very depressed, very pessimistic around like, this is never gonna work, I'm never gonna get the hang of this, we'll never be able to change. And then at some point you just accept it and just say like, maybe we just need to fire our change manager, maybe. So maybe that could be. I love these cartoons, they're always super funny, but it is really when you're dealing with complexity, when you're dealing with user adoption, people will probably go through these phases for sure.
Yeah, so how to tackle complexity? I believe that, or we believe that tackling the complexity of user adoption, you need to do it in a similar way, like to tackle a complex software development project. And we have tested this theory now on many cases, and it actually seems to work pretty well. So classical way, how user adoption is done, that you create some training materials, maybe do a few of classroom or online trainings, and then you basically throw the whole thing over the fence and then let the users handle them themselves with all what is happening. So it doesn't really work, right? But what works is doing it in an agile way. So by meaning you come here, you look at, okay, what are our challenges? What do we need to overcome? Then you make a plan, a proper sprint planning, basically, and then you execute your plan in 2 to 4 weeks sprints. But the most important thing is that you measure the impact of the measures you are doing, that you measure the impact of the activities you're doing during the sprints. Otherwise, you will not see what the users like or what they adopt and what not. And then after the measuring phase, of course, you adapt, by meaning you do a planning again, and then you repeat that until this is over. And the funny thing is with user adoption is that the user adoption in the beginning of the rollout of a new tool is different than, let's say, 3 months later. So after 3 months, you don't need to give any quick guides or quick startup information to the users anymore, because they already know that. If you give it to them, it's worthless. But maybe they're more interested in, okay, how can I automate my work? So maybe you can give them some ideas of simple flows, what they can do by themselves, or just copy and so on. And even though if they can start doing by themselves, they even start to feel good that they can actually do something cool like a power automate, which kind of speeds up my working time. So the point is that user adoption isn't ending after 2-3 months. It's just having a different aspect on the whole story, right? And this is what a lot of people forget. They say, okay, we do the rollout project, we do some user adoption, that's it, right? It's like driving your Ferrari always in the first gear, okay? So you wanna go to really get speed, you wanna get it to the 8th gear, or how many gears a Ferrari has, I don't know. So, but that's the point of the whole story. So user adoption is a journey. It starts. I have these 4 phases: the discovery phase, where you need to show the value of the new tool or the thing as soon as possible. Then you have the onboarding phase, which is the classical like training phase. Learning how to use that stuff, what works, what doesn't work. Then it's the productivity phase. This is the routine phase. That's there where you start to get really good at things and start to automate and so on. And then a few of those who are in the productivity phase, they will become masters. They are really the enthusiasts, the early adopters, the propeller heads, and the ones who are really interested and also are interested in helping others who are stuck. So, and for those phases, this is how the user adoption changes over the time. And like that, it's very complex. So like that, you can only do it in this kind of repetitive, iterative way, like Agile.
Awesome. Yeah, sounds good. So we all need to go Agile very soon.
Yeah, it's a recommendation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then of course also this comes from ProSci. It's at the moment for Microsoft one of the change management standards, and the ProSci has this ADKAR model. So A for awareness. So this is kind of the model to kind of describe the change management process in a way. So A for awareness. So is there the need for change, and does the user or the person understand that, or does she or he has a different need or a different awareness for the need of change? So you need to kind of communicate that. Then of course the desire and to support the change. So okay, I have the awareness, I need to change something, but do I have even the desire to do so? Am I okay with this at this very moment, or is it so much painful that it causes this desire to actually take action? The K for knowledge. So what do I need to know in order that I can make this change happen, right? Then A, the ability to demonstrate skills and behavior. So do I have the ability and the skills and the knowledge then to do the change? So for instance, in running, if I go running, I have the awareness I should go run. I have the desire of running because I want to lose weight. I know that I run in a way like forward. So I know what is the best way of running, and the ability, do I have feet to run, right? Or do I have means to go running somewhere? So it's the ability and the skills and the behaviors. Do I have this behavior pattern in place that it creates this ability that I can overcome this change? And R, reinforcement to make the change stick. That's in my point of view, one of the most important ones, because this is where most of the change is not happening. Okay, in the beginning you have the enthusiasm, yeah, we're going to change, we're going to do this. After 6 or 7 days, you're back in watching cat videos on Facebook. So yeah, so you need to find ways to kind of reinforce the change, to kind of make it stick.
Yeah, awesome, cool. So let's wrap up. One of the things that I think is a really important, difficult part on Office 365 as a platform is that it is always the latest and greatest. So it's called an Evergreen platform. Every time you go there, you always have the latest thing. So that means that there are a lot of things changing And I even now in these COVID Corona times, I heard a few people already say that they kind of feel that now there are much more changes happening because Microsoft needed to reevaluate the way they do their projects or the way they release their software. They reevaluated everything. So there was much more coming out. And I hear some people, some end users saying like, this kind of feels like drinking from a fire hose. So I want to keep up to date with all the new functionality. I want to be there. I want to see it. I want to learn it. But it's just so much that is coming that it's not feasible to grab it all. So make sure that you talk to your users about it. Make sure that you have a constant communication line open so that you can constantly communicate all those new things that are coming. Also, I think change is super hard. It's not easy to change. I mean, we all have these weights or kettlebells or whatever, or some kind of fitness equipment laying around in the house because a few years ago we said, yeah, we're gonna change and I'm gonna work out at home and I'm gonna do this. I actually have my own one here. So I just took it from the attic just for this session. Because otherwise it's just been collecting dust. Because I really want to do that, but if you don't reinforce that, just like Jussi said, it's just gonna sit there and collect dust. So change is hard.
When did you lose it? When did you use it the last time, Marijn?
I've got no idea. A few years ago, probably.
Yeah.
So you buy it, you use it for 5 times, and then you're like, yeah. So oh well. So Jussi, for you to wrap up, man. Because we're on time.
So yeah, can we blame the end user? I think maybe partly, or partly not. Can we blame the management? Definitely, we should always blame the management. Can we blame the tools? Oh, yeah, of course, we always blame the tools. So the point is that you cannot really blame anyone. So the fact is, it's just a very complex topic, but there are strategies to mitigate what to do when. And of course, you can only be to blame if you don't address these topics. And as kind of a wrap-up thing, that you should always keep the user in mind. So when you are rolling out a new thing, when you are designing a new user experience, think about what the user would think when she or he enters that new tool or application or needs to use that process. Mostly still in the business world, processes are designed not for humans, rather for machines. And this is also why it is usually so reluctant for people to do those repetitive, like boring tasks, because we humans, we are machines of emotions, right? And it just doesn't trigger any emotion. And that's why most people are reluctant to do those things. So think about what would make a person engaged in this process. So a while ago, I have been talking a lot about gamification. That's a very interesting topic by itself. But it's not only about making games out of or game-like experiences, but if you look behind the curtains, why a game is engaging, it is because it is designed to trigger human emotions, right? And in order to really make users engaged, this is something what you need to achieve. Otherwise, it will be always kind of boring and bland, and you have no engagement going on. So to trigger human emotions, that's the key of the whole thing, and that is why it is so complex, because everyone is different and everyone has different triggers and so on. But there are still similarities and patterns in there what you can try to find and try to work with those.
All right, cool. Thanks. That was a good wrap up. So, dear people, dear attendees, please leave some speaker feedback. Definitely have some event feedback. Don't forget to jump into the raffle to get one of those awesome Oculus Quest things. They're so much fun. If you have any questions for us, you can contact Jussi, you can contact me. Our contact details are on there. Do it on LinkedIn or on Twitter or wherever you find us.
Yeah.
Hopefully you'll see us very soon at a live event, not an online live event, but a proper live event in person near you. Hopefully we'll get through this. So stay safe, wash your hands, work from home, and thank you all very much.
Yeah, same here. Stay safe, and thanks a lot for listening.